and like just the idea and concept of going to therapy, it's almost like admitting that you're crazy or something's wrong with you.
Today's generation doesn't know how to write. That's what a high school English teacher told me several months ago. Why did he say that? Because he was seeing it among his students. Students who didn't understand sentence structure and grammar, much less the art of storytelling. Here were several dozen teenagers, and less than half of them had ever even read a book purely for pleasure. This is the world of technology, the world of AI. Arguably the most urgent and prevalent topic of the modern day, we are talking about continuously evolving technology that has grown to affect nearly every aspect of our lives. A tool that, when used correctly, opens up immense possibilities for critical thinking, and when used incorrectly, has degenerative effects on a person's ability to communicate, express, and learn effectively. Danbae Kim is just about as close as one can get to being a full-on AI expert. As a fellow at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, she works with both students and educators to guide them in the thoughtful, responsible, and beneficial use of artificially intelligent technology. And that's not all. Through her platform PromptED, she's teaching others exactly how to use AI in a way that encourages critical thinking. At the core of it all, what makes Danbae special is how connected she is to being human. AI has its place as a tool and as a supplement, but few things are more fulfilling than a good, honest conversation. My name is Yuvan Rasaya, and every 2 weeks, I sit down with people from all walks of life who have something meaningful to offer. Lessons, stories, and honest reflections on personal growth. These conversations aren't about having all the answers. They're about learning from people who've lived through moments of loss, change, and renewal. Welcome to Lived Words.
Okay, I have a question, Yuvan. Like this is, so you're Gen Z, right?
I am.
I'm curious, like again, not putting you in a spot to speak on behalf of your entire generation, but you personally, and also the peers around you, do you think that this generation struggles with boredom more because of the insane amount of access you have to content and exposure? So, because I grew up again in a very like jungle-like analog experience when I was growing up, but Gen Z in particular, you grew up with so much access to content, right?
Absolutely.
And in a very bombarding way. It wasn't like, okay, one reel is gonna be a 10-minute watch. It's gonna be like 30 seconds, 15 seconds.
Right.
So
Short form content is huge. We have no attention span. No attention span.
And like in like Gen Z's defense, the technology is not designed for that, right? So I'm curious, like again, just more for your personal, in your personal experience, do you think you struggle with boredom more? And how does that relate to your relationship with tech?
Somewhat. I think something that we don't do is read. As a generation. For the vast majority of us don't read, like at all. And didn't grow up really reading and aren't reading right now. And as we get older, we're reading even less. And I am lucky, I grew up reading. I used to read 3 or 4 books a week. I was like super avid reader and I used to read super fast. And that was up until like high school. And then my reading has stopped since then. Gotten busy and I've put it off. I know. That's what I tell myself. I'm like, you gotta go back.
R.I.P.
I have a book in my backpack and I haven't read it. And I was reading it the other night. Finally, I hadn't read it in a month. It was just I'd read half of it and then I stopped. But it's not good. It's really not good. And I think, and I say that because there is a lot of things I think that are positive about reading. And I'm lucky that I someone who was reading as growing up. And so I have some of those kind of. I've learned some of those things, so I don't struggle as much with attention as I see the people around me do. But many of us didn't, right? Many of us didn't grow up really reading. We grew up with YouTube, and then we grew up with TikTok and Instagram, and then everything just gets shorter and shorter. And I think that's sort of the unfortunate nature of the way that social media has progressed. But I think reading is such a powerful thing because one, it's off the internet. Right? You're not connected to anything. You're not connected to the world. You're not going to get a notification on your phone. Like there is nothing else to distract you when it's just you and a book, except for like real world things. Right? There's nothing on the internet digitally that can distract you because there's nothing digital about it. Unless you're reading online, but that's a whole separate thing.
reading a real book, physical book. I think there is something about having something physical in your hands that you can hold, that you can touch, that you can turn the pages, that it's kind of incorporating your senses a little bit more. You can smell the book, like you feel the book. I think
the smell is so good.
right, and I think that we lose that when we go to online reading and then we go to videos, and then we go to TikTok, and things just get shorter and shorter and easier to process. I think there is an introspection to reading and a reflection to reading where I will read a page of a book again because I'll have not understood it, and I'll read it again. And then I'll read a paragraph again because I'm like, wait, what happened here? That doesn't happen online because it's just, no one really rewatches videos. Like, it's not a thing. It's because you see them and you hear them and you, like, people are talking, and it's very easy to understand usually. And they're meant to be because they're short, right? And I think the third thing is that it's slow. Books are long. Books are, take hours. They don't take minutes or seconds.
Or days, right? Depending on what you're reading.
Or days.
And Ivan, I profoundly resonate with
or
everything.
Weeks, depending on the book.
Or weeks, exactly, depending what you're reading,
Right.
And maybe it's like the Britannica Encyclopedia said, which then potentially translates into years of your time.
Yes.
But I think what I really I'm taking from what you said is just the importance of conserving analog experiences in the age of, like, whether it be AI and social media.
Right.
And what I think is so interesting, and I'll give you a metaphor, which is a guiding North Star. There's difference, and shout out to Professor Chris Dede, who initially introduced me to this.
Sure.
So there's a difference between sunlight and moonlight. So sun generates its own light. Moon does not generate its own light. It reflects sunlight,
Yes.
right? And so that's how moonlight works. So the difference between sunlight and moonlight is that humans, we need sunlight to survive. Moonlight is a nice to have, okay? And so the way that kind of transfers over to like content and, let's say, books, is that now we're living in an age where AI reflects so much of, like, human sunlight, so original content, and
Yes.
remixes it.
Yes.
And I'm not demonizing moonlight. I love moonlight,
Right.
But I need access to sunlight, and I also need to experience generating my own sunlight, you know?
Right.
And so
Right.
I think a big part of, like, and how I tie that to reading is, again, you shared this observation that you and maybe fellow peers are not reading as much,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it's so important, in addition to what you described, the tactile sensory experience, the slow nature, to actually engage with original content. Because more and more young people are relying on AI-generated summaries. You take Notebook LM, you generate a podcast, but these are all remixed things.
Yeah.
So imagine, like, it's almost equivalent to just listening to cover bands and, like, it's like Martin Garrix came out with this remix of this song, but you don't know the original song,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I love me a good remix, but just, I think, to be able to generate your own authentic sunlight and content and work, whether it be a video or writing a diary, whatever it may be, you need to actually engage with more source material,
Right.
aka sunlight content, right?
Right.
And a big part of that is books. What's so interesting, ChatGPT came out November 2022. So there's a pre and post, right? So post ChatGPT, a lot of content was done in collaboration with AI. And I'm not saying that's bad. It's just a different bucket of content,
Yes.
just
Yep.
looking at it objectively.
Yep.
But so it's so important even to consume content from before this age, where it's like really one human's work took
Yep.
lots of trial and error, and to engage with that so that you retain the ability to do that.
Yes.
So that, like, in a future, let's say 10 years, 20 years down the line, there's no original human content. I would find that really, really sad.
Yeah, I
Because
agree.
the human experience is that we can actually tap into that. Like that,
agree.
we can translate our complex lived experiences, both good and bad, highs and lows, and translate that into something that actually can evoke something in someone,
Yes.
and in your community.
Yes.
So that ability feels so essential.
Yes.
And it comes down to what you're saying about the reading for all the reasons you described. And so I really hope that, like, after this, we should read, tonight we'll actually, like, I have so many, I have stacks of, like, physical
You
books.
have no idea. I have a 5-page Google Doc of just book titles in it.
Amazing.
It's that I haven't read.
Bring reading back.
I know.
Like physical books
I know.
too,
Yes. Yes. It's just all the titles, so I remember them, so I don't forget anything that I've been told to read. Absolutely. People tell me that reading is boring, and it's like, I feel like that's one of those things where it's like, stories are one of the most powerful things that we can create as human beings, I think. And whatever form of media that story takes, right? If it's a book, if it's a show, if it's a movie, if it's a documentary, if it's whatever, if it's just a conversation, right? Storytelling, like verbally.
Yeah.
It's something of an art that I feel is almost dying because we read so little and we consume stories so little that we don't know how to create them anymore, right? And I spoke to an English teacher of mine, and I think I've talked about this before on the podcast. But he was my junior year English teacher. He lived in my dorm, and he's talked about how the freshmen that were coming into Phillips Exeter, who lived through COVID, right, grew up, have begun growing up with AI. They're in 7th, 8th grade when AI is becoming a thing, and LLMs, and they have access to ChatGPT. They're 4th and 5th grade. They were in COVID, and they were completely disrupted their lives, and they can't write. They're like really bad, and I was like, what do you mean? Like their grammar sucks? He was like, no, they just don't have originality. Like there's no creativity. They don't know how to tell stories.
Yeah.
They don't know how to talk about what happened to them. They don't know how to reflect.
Yeah.
Because they haven't read it, right? To write, you have to read.
2,000%.
Reading has made me a writer, and if I hadn't grown up reading, then I wouldn't love to write, and I wouldn't be good at writing, because I wouldn't know how. And it's this fascinating thing where it's like these kids are now so reliant on AI and so reliant on the internet to tell them things that they don't know how to come up with concepts. It's crazy.
100%. And I think ties so beautifully to what you were describing as, like the importance of boredom, I think like when it comes to writing and original ideas or even storytelling, you need to sit in boredom. It's not like you're always constantly in a state of inspiration
Yes.
and aha moments.
Yes.
That happens, but
Yes.
followed after some moments of boredom.
Yes.
And so I think that's the thing that's so tricky about this technology. I think there are definitely affordances of LLMs and generative AI, but only if humans retain the ability to like also tap into their own creativity, and then the AI becomes more of like an additional layer to that or a companion to that.
Right.
And so it's oh my God, I can talk about this for 10 hours, but I feel a tremendous amount of responsibility coming from the zillennial generation. So we're like, I'm right between Gen Z and like the older millennials.
Yes.
And I have such a good mix of analog and digital experiences.
Yes.
And I feel a tremendous responsibility to make sure that this generation, both Gen Z and Gen Alpha, really grew up feeling a sense of admiration for the beauty of analog experiences, tech-free experiences, if only to retain that ability to do things on your own, to write on your own, to think on your own, and not demonize the technology either. I'm like not that at all. I do think it can facilitate many different things in a positive way, but with the ability to like do things on your own, right? And a lot of that is boring, it's slow. But then think about the societal structures we live in, right?
Yes.
Everything is so fast-paced. I
Yes.
can't even imagine the expectations of a school like Phillips Exeter, right?
Yes.
It's a highly competitive environment. You have access to a lot of resources, and there's something great about that, right?
Yeah.
But with that access to resources and this community of very brilliant people is that expectation to also perform.
Yes.
And you always will compare yourself, whether it's subliminally or consciously. And so it's like, I'm sure that's also like had its own challenges, right?
Yeah.
And so my point is, we can, yes, preach boredom and slowness, but as long as we create societal structures or school contexts or whatever communities that promote, do it fast and do it quickly, or just do more. It's not even about the speed, actually. It's about the expectation to achieve a lot.
Right.
And that comes usually, you only have so much time in the day.
Right.
So I think these are things where I'm not a fan of people that use AI as a scapegoat to all the problems in society. Yes, AI is definitely perpetuating certain inequities and shedding light on spotlighting things that were already a problem. But we need to get to the root of that versus demonize this technology,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And a lot of that comes down to what are the expectations we're putting on young people? What are the conditions that they're subject to? And how does that translate to lack of boredom and slowness? Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that concept of slowness is I think like we can come up here and talk about it, and the easy response of anyone listening can be, yeah, but if I do that, I fall behind, right?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what you're speaking to, where it's
Yeah.
like the expectation is that you're doing all these things and getting all these things done. If I take a moment to relax or to look at the world,
Yeah.
or take several moments to be bored and just think and introspect almost and live in here a little bit, right? Live in my head. you lose out on time, right? And we talk so much about how precious time is, and I need all the time that I can have, because if I don't do all my work done on time, then I'm gonna have this problem and that problem, then I'm gonna fall behind at school, then I got a test coming up, and it becomes too much, right? It becomes too much, and we have created a system where people don't have the time to be bored. And I know that the internet is all about, you have to make the time, and that's true to some extent. It is, but it's also like, okay, I can make the time, but I'll fall behind, and that's hard to rationalize. I'm a better person, even though it looks like I'm not, because I've fallen behind academically, right? And even though there is growth, it's not quantified, right? Because we're quantifying your grades, or where you got into college, or how much money you make, right? That's the numbers that we look at. Those are the things that we have measures for, but we don't have measures for how good of a person are you? How comfortable are you within yourself? How fulfilled do you feel? Right? We can't measure those things. We don't have systems to measure them. And so it's easy to say, well, I'm good enough, because you don't know. It's like no one's gonna look at my happiness score, right? They're just gonna look at my grades. So I just need to get good grades, and the happiness doesn't matter.
And I think, like, to your point about time, we've created a society where time has to be always used productively. Even you have to rest productively, you have to eat productively, and I think that's just like it feeds into the grind culture that we're living in, which I think young people and adults face. So to create a restorative environment and where boredom is embraced and slowness is embraced, we need to just lose a sense that time has to be productive. And I'm a big fan of spontaneity and like really serendipitous encounters. I think that's so beautiful, right? Where you're living in an algorithm-free world where it's not like the system knows you and it's going to recommend, but it's just so random and mysterious. And the more you can experience that, I think the more life gets beautiful in a way. And so my point is, I think some of the most interesting encounters I've had in my life were where I just wasn't using my time so productively. Where I was like, oh no, I need to do this with my time. I'm in a random museum because I just felt like it. And then in the line waiting to get into the Louvre, like I met this lady, and we had like the most fascinating conversation, and she was able to help me navigate a certain big life decision, And so again, because that afternoon, because I am really like a calendar person, so I usually have blocks of time of this is it, but I have to go off script, And like I still struggle with that so much, and I am well aware of the pressures that young people face, especially in a context like Korea, where similar to like what you described, like they just have so much they have to achieve, to stand out, to have economic mobility, academic mobility. And so, and then at the same time, we have this technology that's advancing quickly, that's taking a lot of the human, let's say, whether it be grunt work or more knowledge work, but it's affecting it, right? Whether you believe in artificial general intelligence and superintelligence, still, it's going to have an impact on society. But meanwhile, we're still like not creating a society where like, okay, guys, technology is going to take a lot of these things and we have more time. We're still living in that productively obsessed culture, right? So I just don't know what there's like a dissonance here. Because the technology is going to do what it's doing. People are going to be less.
So now we're going to expect more of you.
Exactly.
You're just going to move it up.
Which feels counterintuitive, right? I feel like in a society where AI is taking a lot of these different aspects of work, depending on your domain, like it feels like a very healthy thing to be like, okay, young people and adults, take that free time to really introspect so that you can achieve the most high quality of your work, like creative inspiration and like deep fulfillment, right? But no, we're just like being like, we gotta punch out more numbers, or and I think I just worry about that.
It's an opportunity, I think, with AI, with large language model. Oh my God, I can't speak. Large language models, right? And it's an opportunity to create a system like that where it's like, okay, your literal workload is lessening because AI is taking some of that and making things easier, right? As it should. That's the point. That's why we build tools. But instead of saying, okay, we built this tool, now let's do something new with that time. It's like, no, let's just give you more work to do, right? Let's fill up that time because those are your work hours. Those are what we're expecting you to do. And I think that's just not the right way to think about this, right? It's not the right way to think about things, and it's and people, it's just like, I mean, people don't have time for relationships. People don't have time to read. They don't have time to hang out with their friends. They don't have time to call their mom. They don't have time to eat lunch. They don't have time to sleep enough. They don't have time to, like, it's like, come on.
Yeah.
Really?
It's so true.
These are basic things,
Yeah.
right? These are basic things. Eating food, sleeping, having social connection, right? Connecting with people that you care about, right? And we don't do it. We just don't. We get caught up in this world, and it's not even, and it's so hard for me to sit here and say like, oh yeah, don't get caught up in the world, because what am I supposed to expect you to do?
Yeah.
I do the same thing.
Yeah.
I do, and I know it, and I'm trying to be better at it, but I'm not good at it, right? I'm not. I really am not, and I do it all the time. Where and my mom will tell me, you haven't called me. I'm like, I don't even realize. I was just caught up in all the things. I just completely forgot.
Yeah.
And I feel awful, right? And she feels awful, and it's like, and then it's like, Mom, I'm not forgetting you. But in a little bit I am, right? Because I'm so caught up in all the things, and it's awful that there's even a possibility that I could forget to call my mom.
It's interesting, Ivan. So there were periods of my life where, because my mom, like I've, especially after high school, I haven't lived in the same city as my mom for a very long time. And so there was a period in my life where I would talk to my mom every 3 months, or God forbid, like every 6 months or something like that. And now I talk to her probably every day, if not twice a day, when I like walk to work, and then when I walk home, because of the time difference.
Right.
And I think what's so interesting about just designing your life and making sure the holistic balance is there is actually having non-negotiable routines.
Yeah.
Because I have now like every day I call my mom, even if it's like 5 minutes, right? It's not like it has to be every like 2-hour rant or 2-hour philosophical conversations, but that has completely changed like my dynamic. So I guess the question is, what are the non-negotiables, right? And it could be, okay, 5 minutes of talking with my mom every day. It could be 30 minutes, but in a way that's realistic, not like, okay, I'm going to slot in an hour, because you only have so many hours in a day. And I think the non-negotiables look different for different people, depending on the stage in your life, what environment you're in. But to really make that assessment and then create that routine is really important. And I struggle with that because I travel a lot. I go to different time zones. So that has been the ultimate challenge for me, where like, what are the non-negotiables, and how do I actually make sure I don't punt on these things?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And it's hard.
It's hard.
To make those things and come up with them and plan them and be consistent with them, right? It's so easy to say, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, or today was a hard day. Every day is a hard day, right? Every day is a hard day. No day ever goes the way exactly that you planned it. That doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. And so you talked about flexibility, and I suck at flexibility, because if things don't follow my schedule, then I'm like, oh my God, everything's ruined and the plan has failed, and might as well give up. And I have gone into this defeatist mindset, and I'm really trying not to do that, but it's something I've been working on, and it's hard to not, right? It's hard to be like, okay, I can still salvage this. I can keep doing something. I can find something else to do. Have the flexibility, because it's that's what it takes, right? To stick with those routines. I don't think that routines are about being inflexible, right? I think that sometimes we get caught up in like, okay, I need to call my mom twice a day, so I'm going to do every single day, every single thing the exact same way. I have to leave the loop at this time. I have to do this at this time, right? I can't have a conversation with someone online because I got to go do whatever you have to do. I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's not the point here, right? Routines are not about let's do everything exactly the same every single day.
Yeah.
That's not how you build routines, because one, that doesn't really happen, and two, even if it does happen, life is boring.
Yeah.
Life is awful if you just do the same thing every single day and there's no dynamism, right? There's nothing exciting.
I agree. I think like the way that I've come to perceive and understand routines is less so just like a perfect formula and more of just like a rhythm that you try to follow, right?
Yeah.
And you can be offbeat sometimes. That's okay. Sometimes that offbeat thing is like nice to, be like, oh, what was that? And so I agree that I, for the longest time, really was so averse to the idea of a disciplined routine life, because it felt like the antithesis of spontaneity, where you're like, oh no, life should be spontaneous and serendipitous. But like, as you so beautifully described right now, it's not about that. It's not about these rigid jail-like structures where you can't like go out of that or deviate from that, but it's more so like a guideline, and hopefully creating a healthy rhythm in your life. In the same way, you have a healthy circadian rhythm that allows you to sleep well and deeply and have that as a rhythm, right? Yep. And so that's the thing. I think like routine, a lot of the times has this connotation of rigidity.
Yes.
And like, if you deviate from that, you're a failure. You have not met your goals.
Yes, people talk about discipline. It's like discipline is not rigidity.
It's not.
Discipline is flexibility. Discipline is being able
sure.
to still do the things that you need to do, want to do, or have to do, even when it's not easy, right? When things are not following the plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Moral of the story: call your mom, call your dad.
Yes. Call your loved ones.
Yeah.
You know?
Call your siblings. Call your friends.
Yes. And call, not just text.
Yes.
Call.
Yes. Call your cousins. Call your uncles and aunts. And call your dog. I don't know. Can we talk about Blackpink?
Okay. Yeah.
This is something that I found out very recently, so I actually don't really know.
Yeah, so okay, we can talk about the Korean entertainment industry. So I had like an early exposure to the industry at an early stage in my career.
Yeah.
So I won't get into all the gory details about the industry, but you know what, groups like Blackpink or any boy girl or girl band that goes through K-pop, it's really a lot of discipline. You know, they start at a very young age to go into training, right? And then sometimes you're in training for like 5-10 years and you don't debut. So there's not like a guaranteed success.
Right.
It's not like really the American Hollywood model of you get a label and you like debut. It's a very different system where you go you're joining a training camp. It lasts an X number of years, undefined, and you can either debut or not. So there's such, and this is like you're investing some of the most formative years of your life from age, depending how young you enter the industry, but it could be from age 12 to like 25, right? Where you're really in this almost like boot camp like structure of, okay, every day you have to learn dance choreography, vocal training, and and so my point is, I have the utmost respect for those individuals that can actually navigate those structures and have the resilience, but there are also cases where people don't, right? And so I think a lot of people have criticized K-pop and Korean entertainment and the effect on mental health. And having had some level of exposure to that industry, I realized it's kind of like actually quite analogous to professional athletes in the sense that what makes Novak, right? It's not just sheer physical talent,
Right.
you know? It's actually his ability to have mental and emotional resilience.
Right.
That like, if he gets one game or one match wrong, right? It doesn't shatter his sense of self and value and all the years and moments that went into his training. And similarly, for whether it be a group like Blackpink or any other, it's like just realizing that, okay, this maybe album or this single did not do as well, but be able to still retain the joy and the process of making the art.
Absolutely.
I think it requires that. So if you think of, and of course, artists and creatives still struggle with this, right? How do you go from having like the perfect album that just really global phenomenon and the next album is a total flop? It's hard to reconcile those things, right? It's hard to realize, oh, am I just losing my art? Are people not vibing with me anymore? So it's this continued, and I think that's why being an artist is so vulnerable, because you're sharing the most vulnerable parts of you. You can't make good art without tapping into some of the darkest moments in your life and struggles, right?
Yes,
and I'm not
absolutely.
trying to romanticize the broke like artist life, but still you need to be able to tap into these aspects of your life, also the joyful moments, right?
Yeah.
But it's a very, and you put out that to the universe, and there's so many, you know, supporting members of the team. There's like the producers, the creative directors, so there's so much love that goes into that. And then to have people not vibe with it is so, because like for me, if I write a report, right, I submit a report to MIT for an AI in education paper, people don't vibe with it, it's okay, like it's not so personal, you know?
Yeah.
But it's very different. So all that to say, I think being exposed to the entertainment industry has really given me new insights about mental health, emotional health, as it pertains to just resilience. You know, like how do you train muscles in such a way that failure or somebody not approving of your work or your output doesn't like translate to self-detriment and self-doubt.
We're so quick to label one-hit wonders, and like
Yeah.
people like, it's like, oh, they had one good song and that was it. That was their one song, right?
Yeah.
One good album, and then they're done. Like that, they're never gonna be good again. And we do it so quickly.
Yeah.
It's like people, their careers are still going on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we've already said, okay, that was their one hit, and they're never gonna have another hit.
Yeah.
It's so odd, and I can't imagine how it must feel as an artist for you to have a good song, and instead of people being like, wow, look at this good song, this artist is really good, they're like, oh, one hit wonder, right? They had the one good song, now they're
Yeah.
done. It's like that. What? How? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Because in most industries, when you do something well, then people are like, wow, they must be good, right? They're going to do something well again. When it comes to music, we're like, oh, that was it. They peaked, right?
Yeah, and it's so cruel, isn't it?
It is. It's awful.
It's so cruel.
awful.
And I think also one thing I realize is, again, tying to, creative industry, entertainment industry, and what it taught me about mental health, is just to be able to not be obsessed with scale. So of course, as an artist, the dream is to play like at Wembley or Madison Square Garden and just like these really prolific venues.
Yeah.
And that is amazing, right? You dream of that as an artist. But then to not let that be the North Star, like, okay, everyone needs to like my music. Because when you try to cater to everyone, you cater to no one, right?
Yes.
So that's, I think, the tension in a lot of creative arts where, of course, indie artists, I think, are not as obsessed with the scale, where they're like, okay, I need to sell out stadiums. And they're able to be like, you know what, localized. Even if I play in venues with 50, 100 people, if those 50, 100 people vibe with my music, I'm happy, right?
Yeah.
And that's not to say that people shouldn't, strive for scale and
Right.
like more global audiences, but how do you still strive for that without, that orientation of I have to like cater to the world? And I think that's and that's for any type of domain
Right.
beyond just creative arts, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think it's more so how do you retain that joy for the doing, that self-expression in whatever domain of work, whilst just hoping to have a bigger impact, I think we do not have enough, I think we've become too obsessed with scale. And I say that coming from a technical background, having been in the startup industry,
Yeah.
and even just exploring the concepts of AI, everything has to be like, is it gonna, okay, let's say you're applying for a grant at a philanthropic institution, it always comes down to, is it measurable and is it scalable, right? But
Yes.
what if it's
Yes.
not a scalable solution, but it's really, really a beautifully responsive, impactful solution for that community? Should that not be enough?
Yeah.
Because also the thing about the world is like this tribe and this community different, right? So to
Right.
create a scalable solution,
Right.
right? And that's not to say we shouldn't have like adaptive frameworks that can actually scale, but there's something that I've been thinking so much about is our like obsession with scale. Like artists can only succeed if they're Taylor Swift level of like Swiftie fandom. I mean, like why? And also films, right? It has to be a blockbuster where it's like we're making, you put in 100 mil, we make $500 million.
Yes.
I mean, why? Why? Maybe like we just like it really one little community really vibes with that art and long live that art,
Exactly.
And so I have been really challenged the past few months to think about because I've also been obsessed with scale. I think about, I want to have as much impact as I possibly can, but with quality impact, but also challenging myself, being like, Damdi, like you don't have to change 10, 20, 30 million people's lives. And that could be a natural outcome if you continue to do the things that you really love and really preserve the quality. So I think because I've been so indoctrinated by the startup industry where it's all about scale, right? Like go to millions of users, hundreds of millions, and then hopefully billions. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but I think we've become too obsessed with scale.
Yeah. I think we now have the capabilities that we don't have to scale as much. And I think that people look at things the wrong way, where it's like, look, technology has improved, AI has improved, now we can scale more. I actually think we should scale less.
Yeah.
Because the more you scale, inherently, you're going to leave things out. Because people are more and more unique, right? And so you have to generalize more and more to reach more people. That's just how it works. And so, and that's a thing with medicine, right? It's a big thing with medicine. Personalized medicine is a huge kind of concept, I think, that we talk about all the time, where it's like, if you can personalize medicine because everyone is so unique. But even in any industry, I think scaling down, right? Smaller scale projects can have really big impact in smaller communities. And if we can have a lot of small scale projects, I think technology gives us the ability to do that, to be able to maintain more things, essentially, right? It's more projects at the same time in different communities that are different, right? Not the same thing everywhere. And this is maybe a fun example, but I think one industry that does this sort of well is the gaming industry. I think with indie games, it's a whole thing. Like everybody loves, like it's this whole thing. They're sort of, not super high budget, right? They're not really fancy. They're not very long, right? They're like an hour, right? Half these games are like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and people love them, and they reach this like kind of small community of people, and they thrive in that community, right? And they don't go big and win Game of the Year. Or get on PlayStation or anything, but they live in these little kind of corners of the world, in these corners of the gaming community. And I think that there's a beauty in that, in being able to touch people in a certain way and reach people in a certain way through the sort of uniqueness of these games.
Yeah.
And they're so small. Like they're just little things,
I
right?
know.
They're not complicated.
I know.
Indie games aren't that complicated, but they're not supposed to be.
And I think that's my kind of biggest qualm with large language models. They're fascinating, as I said. Like let's take a moment to appreciate the beauty of this kind of instrument thing. But this obsession with creating such a powerfully generalist model that can do from A to Z, then a lot gets lost in the mix, right? The cultural responsiveness and the risk for more hallucinations. So I really love the fact that you shed light on technology ability to really create more niche and smaller communities. But we're taking a very different course of action right now, right? Where we're like, okay, this technology has never been cheaper than now. Really, really, just the fact that this billion-dollar industry that gave rise to LLMs, it costs so much money, but you have access to it for free, at least to a certain degree. Of course, it's an equity issue in terms of who has access to powerful, the most powerful model. But still, the fact that there's even a free tier is like mind-blowing to me sometimes, right? So my point is, yes, it's like technology has become cheaper, accessing knowledge has become cheaper, but we're still just trying to do it en masse versus being like, okay, how do we create localized models, and how do we translate the affordances of this technology into empowering local communities that really preserve that culture and tradition? And I don't think there's enough effort going into that, because ultimately tech is powered by VCs and venture capital, and they want that scale. They want the next Uber. They want the next Airbnb, right? That can really have global domination. Uber and Airbnb completely changed how we interact, with even just accommodations or, transportations. And so if VCs only reward systems like that, right? And I don't know, I've never thought about how all of this ties into our mental health and well-being, just the fact that this obsession with scale and bigger things and not being okay. I wonder if young people growing up now think okay, I have to, if it's not that big scale, it's not worth it,
Absolutely. I think absolutely.
Yeah.
I think absolutely we have that. And I think it's a culture thing. I think it's, and it stems from, if it's not an A, it's not enough. If it's not an Ivy League school, it's not enough. If it's not $100,000 a year, it's not enough. If it's, right? If I'm not an executive, it's not enough. If I'm not a CEO, it's not it just goes on and on.
It goes on,
right?
Goes on, yeah.
And it's if I don't have 3 houses, it's not enough. It's I need to drive a Hellcat. I need to it's so much.
Yeah.
It's so much.
Yeah.
And it's unrealistic, and it creates expectation for people, and that's why we have that. To go back again to that old point of living life too fast. We live life so fast because we're trying to get to all of these things. It's not enough. I need to have scale. I need to have, I need to reach these higher and higher levels of success, in bigger things. Not even necessarily better things always, but bigger things.
Yeah.
What is the biggest school that I can go to? What is the biggest company that I can work at? What is the biggest, right? It's this size of look how prominent I am because I have this degree, or because I have this degree from this school, or because I worked at this company. And it speaks to how great I must be, which is not necessarily true.
Yeah.
Right? It's not necessarily true. And I think that is a fascinating thing. Some of the most brilliant people that I know, the nicest and kindest people that I know are teachers.
Yeah.
And have, don't make $100,000 a year and aren't in these big executive jobs and didn't go to these crazy great schools.
Yeah.
But do something that they love to do, and they care about people, and they want to help younger people grow. And I think that, and they're really smart. They're really smart, and they get lost in the shuffle a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? Where it's oh, you must not be that successful.
I know, it's
because you're not, if you're a teacher, but you're not a professor at Cornell or Harvard or Brown or MIT or Princeton or whatever.
I know. And I think about just how we're kind of all victims to branding in a way, right?
Yes.
Humans have become individuals have become walking brands, right? What are the tags and it's not even just are you wearing Chanel and Gucci? It's more so what are, like you said, What are your academic affiliations?
What does it say on your LinkedIn?
Huh?
Sorry? What's your LinkedIn resume,
Exactly,
right?
exactly. That's why I don't have LinkedIn. Like, I think even though LinkedIn, like, you have access to such a big network of professionals, there's something about it where I don't think I have the strength right now to really not compare when I'm like doing my LinkedIn's doom scrolling, right?
Yes.
So I just think that like we've become like so obsessed with brands, and we, as life has become more digital, you have
Yeah.
access and exposure to more branding and
Yeah.
marketing in general. And when you were describing just the whole branding thing, I was thinking about being at Harvard. I think about, wow, doing a PhD at Harvard is like one of the greatest achievements in academia because you went and did a doctoral studies at Harvard,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
But what's so interesting is PhD is a very long commitment, like half a decade of your life, and it's a very intimate relationship you have with your supervisor and with your PI. And so you would want to choose not based on the institution, like I want to go to Harvard, but more so, okay, like I really think this person doing this type of research
Right.
is so fascinating. Whether it's be at University of Washington or UC Berkeley or University of Minnesota, whatever it may be, it
Yes.
should be actually so much more like based on the individual and their research. And of course, there's some correlation. Maybe the research coming out of Harvard because there's more endowment and resources.
Right.
But still, they're amazing researchers and academics in different contexts. And so
Right.
I think some of the people at Harvard, I wonder if they've chosen based on the brand name or because they really, and I think there are cases of both, right? But something that I've been thinking about, if I were ever to do a PhD, I don't want it to be as a result of branding decisions. One consideration is, of course, like, okay, is it a good school and it's not going to add to my own brand? I don't think there's anything bad about thinking about that,
Yeah.
but it can't be the one and only measure and metric,
Yeah.
right? And these are things where I hope that young people growing up, again, cuts back to holistic, right?
Right.
Like, how do we hyper fixate on certain types of brands or like type of accolades or institutions? And how do we make sure like people zoom out, young people zoom out to
Yeah.
see, okay, what are other type of, things that are important to you?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I tell you something crazy?
Yeah.
I think probably 60 to 70% of people at Exeter are at Exeter to go to Harvard
Yeah. Yeah.
or
fair.
an equivalent, right? And it blows my mind
Yeah.
because we are, and obviously I'm a graduate now, but was at one of the most incredible, unique institutions in the world.
Yeah.
The way that we teach through discussion, right, through Harkness, the values that we have, the opportunity, like the scale in which that we operate is like a college,
Yeah.
right? And you're in high school and you're able to do these things and you're able to think about these things and you're able to do some of this research and it's like that is insane.
Yeah.
And yet, so many of us are here not because they want to appreciate what Exeter has to offer, which people would kill for,
Yeah.
right? To be able to have that opportunity. And I'm lucky, and I'm so lucky. It's like, oh, I just want to get to Harvard. Like, how do I get to Harvard? Exeter will help me get into Harvard.
Yeah.
So you missed the point. You just missed the point.
Yeah.
And I get it, and I get it. You want to go to Harvard, and I get it.
Yeah.
And I understand why. Because, as a kid growing up, I want to go to Harvard too. Like, right? Everybody wants to go to Harvard, right? It's like, it's Harvard.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad thing, right, at all.
Yeah.
That's the perception that we have, and it's perception that in some ways is earned, right, through reputation. But it's you miss out on living in the moment of like, we have the opportunity to be at this school that has so much value in itself, right? Before you even get to college,
Yeah.
as itself, as an institution, the value that it holds, the amount of learning and growth that can happen there,
Yeah.
is ridiculous. Like, we take college level courses
Yeah.
on the regular. People do all the time. Like, who does that in high school?
I know.
You know what I mean?
It's wild. huh?
Nobody does it.
Yeah.
And we're lucky, and we're able to do it. And you're worried about going to college later,
Yeah.
next 3 years from now, 2 years from now.
Yeah.
Come on.
I wonder, I'm curious, like in the context of
It bothers me. I know. I'm like,
No, but like, let's say in the context of like Phillips Exeter, how much do you think the institutions feeds into that narrative or that,
I'm sure it
setting
does.
of, is there, because I don't think it's just only like
I don't think so either.
individuals left to their own device.
Yes.
This is a very prestigious institution that has long-standing history
yes.
and success too. And so
Yes.
you want that continued momentum or standard, right?
Yes.
And so it's almost like if you go to that, you're like in an environment where you should immerse in the process and
Right.
all the opportunities and the resources, but you still have this like hidden kind of energy in the room, like unspoken energy where it's like, oh yeah, no, you're getting all of this so that you can go to whatever
Yes.
destination, fill in the blank, right?
Yep.
And so that's like, I think the trick. And I consider myself so lucky because I went to this school, shout out to Nelson Mandela School. That's where I went to school
That's
in
awesome.
Berlin. It's a school like largely reserved for diplomats. So like, Berlin is a capital, there are lots of embassies.
Right.
And so it's a public school, like mostly catered towards that audience.
Mm-hmm.
And we were also super privileged. I had access to TEDx. I had access to like all these different aspects of Berlin because like the parents were pretty well connected. But there was not that expectation to like you get into Oxbridge or Harvard. So you have like a bunch of very actually privileged people and
Yeah.
also a pretty well resourced school, but without that culture of like, and so I remember in high school, I had the best time. I always say I peaked in high school. It wasn't in college, it wasn't now. It was really like I had the happiest periods of my life in high school, which is mostly not the case, right? A lot of young people have very difficult experiences in high school, social anxiety, expectation, grind culture.
Especially nowadays.
Yes, exactly. And so for me, I had this very unique experience where I went to a quote unquote kind of a competitive environment where there were people, I think they were ambitious and they were very privileged backgrounds, but there wasn't that culture of like, we got to grind so that we can compete to get into these different places. I like had the best time. I did like MUN, went to different countries in Europe.
Awesome.
I did TEDx, organized a couple of youth conferences. And so my North Star was like really just doing as much as I could, exploring
Yeah.
my curiosities and potential. And it's not to say I like graduated valedictorian, but I think I was like third or fourth best in class. Not because I grinded for that, but it was, I guess I had like some level of studious capacity, but
Sure.
still it worked out, right? Okay, I didn't
Right.
go to Harvard for my undergrad, and it was a very intentional decision for me not to grind to the point like of complete exhaustion and potential burnout to get into the school like that is considered the best, right?
Yes.
And I'm glad I made that decision, but it's still like I still miraculously or serendipitously came to this environment because it happened to just align with my interests,
Right. Right.
So I truly hope that we can create a culture in society where people can like nerd out about things and explore their curiosities in unconventional, like not linear ways without it being so tied to like brand metrics,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just wonder what do you think, Yvonne, are the kind of changes we need in society to foster that type of openness?
It's so hard.
It's
so
tough,
hard.
right? I'm
It's-
curious. Like, let's
it
say in the
is.
American context.
Right. I mean, it's so hard. I think some of it, I think, is an appreciation of what opportunities we actually do have, because I don't know. I don't have the data in my mind. A lot of people don't go to college,
Yeah.
can't go to college, are unable to go to college in the world, but also even in the U.S.
Yeah.
Right? And we fixate so much on almost I don't want to say first world problems, but a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, what college did you go to?
Yeah.
There's people who are like, you went to college? That's crazy. No one here goes to college, right? And I think some of it is that perspective, right? Some of it is an appreciation for things beyond the academic and beyond things that we can count,
Yeah.
right? Things that we have metrics for. That is the hard part in my mind. When I went to the Fezzidan School, I went there for 1 year in 9th grade. It's an all-boys school. Shout out them. And they have a grading system where they grade on letters, right, for grades on how you did on tests and papers and whatever. And they have an effort system. And E is the excellent effort, and then there's S is satisfactory, and all that sort of thing, S plus and everything. It's their whole other grading system that they have. And I think it's really interesting because you can have a B and you can have an E at the same time, and that means you did your best, and your best was a B. And I think we need to start evaluating people, thinking about evaluation of people on an effort scale,
Yeah.
right? Because not everybody is great at all the same things inherently, and whatever, and we all think in different ways, right? We all have unique talents in different fields,
Yeah.
and I think that gets lost in the shuffle when it's like you just look at the letters and it's like A, B, oh, this guy sucks.
Yeah.
Hello? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's not how it works. Because if they give 100% effort, they give 100% effort. And I think that we need to think about people that way. Think about colleges that way. Think about and this obsession with brands becomes like, okay, what do you know? What are you able to do? What are you capable of? Right? That's what is really matters, right? How, if you're hiring, right? Does this person fit the job?
Yeah.
Right? Is this person able to execute?
Yeah.
Is this person going to be able to do what I need them to do? That sometimes may depend on where they went to college, but many times it doesn't.
Yeah.
Right? And many times it doesn't, and I think that gets lost.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I resonate with what you share. Again, sorry to bring it back into the context of
No,
AI, but
please.
a lot of people think about AI use as cheating and short-circuiting, right?
Yes.
Like especially in educational context,
Yes.
whether it be university or even a high school or like a school like Phillips Exeter. Like you use AI, it's against academic honesty and integrity. You haven't done the work. I think it's too simple. Like if AI use equals to cheating, I think we need to think about how have we created assessment models that doesn't actually holistically capture one's effort and the immersion into the process, you know? And so it's not to say that like there aren't AI uses that are reckless and would be considered cheating, but there are also other types of AI uses in educational contexts and learning and teaching capacities that can actually enhance the process of doing, reasoning, and thinking, right?
Yeah.
So all of that to say, I think time and time again about how have we created such rigid assessment structures and assessment models, both at work as well as in academia and school context, and how we need to really just think about, okay, let's not measure some fixed output. It can be a written work or a piece of code or whatever it may be. Let's actually assess like the journey that this person went on, right? Did they immerse? Did they actually ask lots of questions? Did they contribute to the social collective intelligence of that room because they were contributing their like lived experiences and expertise, whatever it may be, right? But that's so much harder to quantify. That's the thing. It comes down to, again, scale. It always comes down, I think, especially in educational context, is this a scalable model?
Right.
That's also why standardized testing is so popular, because we can now en masse, on scale, assess.
Right.
Put people in categories of like, okay, this person is the brilliant one, this one not so, they're mid.
Yep.
And it's a scalable solution. But what's not scalable is like, okay, the process and the joy of doing and learning, because it's like so hard to quantify all of that, you know?
Absolutely.
And so again, the scale thing, huh? Like,
It is. No, absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. It's such a weird way that we think about the world, I think.
Yeah.
And I understand it because as human beings, we like to simplify. And I think that's part of it, where we're simplifying. It's like, it's easy to look at, okay, brand means good, scale is good. Like, you know what I mean? But really, it's, you know what I mean? It's like Harvard, good. Okay. Not Harvard. Okay. And you know what I mean? Like, it's just easy to sort in our brains, and we kind of think that way. It's harder to look at a person and think about them holistically.
Yeah. Totally.
And I think that it goes back to what you were saying earlier, where it's like that's the difficult thing, is to look at people as a whole being. It's more profitable to not, right? And it's in terms of our energy expenditure, in terms of how much money we can make, in terms of all the things. Can we talk about AI therapy? Is AI the future of therapy? Is it not? Where are we going with this?
Okay, so AI therapy, aka AI companionship, I think is really complex. You know, so let's just see it from multiple perspectives. One perspective is, especially in the U.S. context, access to therapy is incredibly expensive.
Yep.
Let's say one of my friends went to Columbia. Her therapy, in the state of or the city of New York, I think it was like $300 an hour. Of course, some of it was partially covered by insurance. But my point is that is an exorbitant amount of money.
Yeah.
Like, and even if you go 4 times, so every week for a month, that's like $1,000+. Right? For most college students, unless you come from a very well-resourced background, it's really hard to afford.
Yes.
So, okay, now let's just, of course, there are now more cheaper or accessible solutions, like BetterHelp, I think, is this a platform where it's much, much more affordable. But funny thing, my friend was describing their experience with BetterHelp, and the therapist was eating like a Big Mac or something. It was so my point is, I don't know, I can't do the quality assurance of that platform, right? But my point is, maybe it's good, but it's like,
we're not
okay,
recommending anything.
Yeah, so it's not like that affordable. But yet people really benefit from having a judgment-free zone, having access to different perspectives, and people like and access to certain evidence-based resources and frameworks, right? So does so I can understand why many people can benefit from some sort of AI-mediated therapy, But what do we mean by therapy is also the question. Therapy is like happens in so many stages. There's so many different types of therapy.
Yes.
There are also stages of therapy where, like I would say, I have the same therapist now for several years. I feel very understood, but it took time. It's not like session one and kaboom, right?
Yes.
So my point is, I think the benefits of having like a human therapist that is, first of all, really, really good. It's a really good match because I think therapist-patient compatibility is not talked about enough.
Yep. Yep.
So there are things that like in that very complex, nuanced relationship that probably AI systems can't fully capture. But it's also, let's see how the technology evolves, right? And then secondly, it's just an accessibility thing,
Yeah.
But then the thing is, Yvonne, like right now, a lot of these systems are very sycophantic, which means that it's a very fancy terminology for overly validating and affirming.
Yep.
And so it's very known that creating an echo chamber of your own perspectives and thoughts. And of course, you can mitigate that. You can tell a AI model to be like, hey, be a devil's advocate and provide different perspectives. But still, the underlying philosophy and like somehow the technology doesn't fully always support that. You can't fully mitigate sycophancy is all I'm trying to say, right? And also when it comes to, let's say, AI systems can provide perspective taking. So let's say I have this version of reality, the LLM has been trained to do more of the perspective taking thing. But the thing is, Yvonne, it's so important for humans to do some of the perspective taking as an internalized process versus this external thing that's always giving you perspectives. And the question is, therapists do that too. They also give like more external perspectives. So it's not an internalized process, but a human-to-human conversation versus a human-to-AI conversation is different because it's like you're talking to a living being entity. So being understood by a human, I think it's not necessarily the same as being understood by an AI. But this is all emerging research, right? So all of that to say, I don't have like fixed views on AI therapy should be banned or not. I think it's super complex. And I think it requires a lot of like literacy in terms of the technology, in terms of how the technology is designed, to what effect, to actually understand the benefits and affordances versus having this like binary, it can solve all mental health issues because now it's like accessible. Or like, okay, AI will never beat a human therapist. I think that's not true. I think there are genuinely human therapists that are not very good at capturing, whatever. Everyone's had a certain level of bad experience with therapy. I think, I mean, at least in my experience, in my friend groups, right? So this statement of like AI therapy is worse, I think it's also too, it's a little bit uninformed, I think. So we'll see how it evolves. Man, Yvonne, it's complex though,
It is. I've heard the perspective. Some people believe that it's like AI is the future of therapy because it's affordable, because it's cheaper, because it's accessible, because it's scalable, because we can reach all these people, and the future of AI is going to be more complex and better at all these things, and we can develop AI models that'll work well and serve as therapists and be functional, and it'll be great. And then there's people who are like, you know what, AI can never be a human, and the only role that AI can ever play in therapy is to serve as a tool to assist a human therapist, right? And there needs to be a human connection because human beings will never connect with a robot on an emotional level the way that you can connect with a human being in therapy. And I see both, right? That is a fair argument for both things. I've always sort of felt uneasy about the idea of connecting with a robot, right? I mean, to be fair, right? I'm just being honest, but also like if there are not enough people who are connecting with people, and then it's better to connect with something than nothing, maybe. Right? And I don't think it's necessarily an argument about quality. It doesn't have to be. Like if the point is that a good human therapist is better than the best AI therapist, then okay, fine, fair, because of that human connection. If that's the argument. And you mentioned obviously then there's bad human therapists, and that's a whole other thing. It's a whole other thing.
So complex.
It is so complex.
One thing that I it's kind of like my guideline with that informs how I use AI. So there is almost like AI like. Going back to the moonlight metaphor, it reflects a lot. So it's kind of like this funhouse mirror is the way I think about it. So depending on the position, it either is a pretty one-to-one reflection or it's distorted, whatever it may be. It's not like a perfect mirror, okay? It's a funhouse mirror. So in the context of now AI use and social emotional dimensions of AI use as it relates to therapy, it depends on like what is the baseline state of that person in terms of their stability And if you're in let's say, a super manic state and you're using
Yes.
an LLM and you're talking to it like a therapist would, is the LLM able to actually, if considering the funhouse mirror effect, how much does it mirror some of the unrealistic perspectives of this individual? So
Yeah.
all that to say, I think that's also one big consideration, right? Someone that's really level-headed, a friend that I constantly admire as someone who's just so level-headed and mature, I don't worry as much about this person using AI for social emotional things. Not to say that there's always going to be some dangers in using a nascent technology that's evolving so quickly.
Yeah.
But my point is that would be less concerning to this friend versus someone who I know has very, is much more unstable,
Yeah.
flips back and forth in emotional state.
Yeah.
So I think that's also one huge consideration.
Yeah.
So I think when I think about AI for education or for therapy, I am always thinking about the complexity and the nuance, right? What is that person's default awareness or consciousness state? What is the type of therapy they're doing? What type of conversation? Is it personal coaching type of conversation? Is it about relates to self-harm and suicidal? You see, so there's so many. So that's why when we say AI for therapy, we need to be able to break down
Yes.
the different type of conversation,
Yep.
the different type of support, and then assess in a
Right.
much more kind of personalized way. And
Right.
our obsession with scale, again, of AI for therapy, is these ambiguous categories is
Yeah.
so much more conducive to scaling,
Yeah.
right? So I think I'm not an expert in as it pertains to AI and therapy, but I'm the first one to say let's think about the complexity based on individual cases, based on the access to this that this individual has access to resources and their mental state and emotional all of these things, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have no fixed opinion of bad or good.
Fair.
But let me give you one perspective that I think is interesting. So it's known in various forms of literature that humans' ability to recognize certain patterns in their life, just even being able to recognize that, whether it be patterns in relationships, as you see, patterns in thoughts and behaviors that lead to a certain worldview, is really important so that you can realize a pattern to be able to change and break that pattern if it's not serving you and it's not healthy for you.
Yes.
But even recognizing those patterns are not easy,
Yes.
right? In our default state, it's not a given. So a benefit of having a human therapist is being shedding light. But a human's ability to map out associations is not, in some cases, as powerful as an AI,
Right.
Because
Right.
let's say as the context window, which is the working memory of these models, become larger and larger, let's say you're talking to this thing 5 hours a day versus a therapist, which is just limited to 1 hour. So the model has, let's say, more a more sophisticated profile over you about certain details of your life, and can maybe map out certain connections in your life and patterns in your life in a way that maybe a human therapist cannot. But then the question is, can a human therapist benefit from that associative mapping of a machine, right? Where let's say you have this app that it's a journaling app, and now the therapist, it has in an ethical way access to that information and whatever insights AI generates and discern, is this an accurate assessment? Let me look at the raw data, whatever this person said. I think that's really interesting, right? So for us, it's really kind of understanding, not in a 0 or 1 way where it's it should be allowed or it should not, but how do we actually use this technology and leverage its affordances, again, the compute and the associative power, which genuinely a human brain can't fully compete with, right?
Yes.
And then actually empower the really good therapist.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think there's this aspect of teamwork, right? Of meshing human capability and the AI capability. It would be ignorant of us to assume that one is necessarily going to be as successful on its own. Because it's not how it works.
Yeah.
Right. That's why we develop tools, because they assist us, but also not, in my mind at least, not because they are able to do jobs for us. Right. Tools allow us to scale. They allow us to do other things while they take care of the things that are kind of less more work. Right. Less creative. I think, and I think that. In some ways that applies, where it's you're giving AI data, analyze, right? Tell me what the conclusion looks like.
Yeah.
And then I can analyze your work and see if it's right. And it makes my job a little bit easier as a therapist, right? Because I can see that I don't have to go do that work myself.
Yeah.
And my brain is I have to write it out and craft it because I can't just do it in my mind. While an AI can.
Yeah.
And I think that aspect of it is powerful, and that sort of teamwork is powerful and important. Yeah. I want to ask you, when you think of the word home, someone who has traveled, who has lived across the globe, what does home look like?
Such a good question. I used to really struggle with this question, especially earlier in my 20s. I was like, oh, where is that physical understanding and concept of home, right? Where you have most of your friends, you're most familiar with that culture,
Right.
and you feel just like at ease because you don't have to constantly confront yourself with cultural differences. And so there are many different definitions of home, but for me, I've realized home is something that I carry with me. And like transcending past the physical definition of a home, where it's like a geography or
Yeah.
tied to a physical location, I think of home as a state of being, getting back to that
Sure.
beautiful act of being, of like, am I really being in the presence? Like, so technically I could be home anywhere in the world. It's like the way that I think about it very spiritually. So I have struggled feeling really settled in Cambridge because for the reasons I described about the social dimensions of my
Yes.
life. I just don't have as flourishing of a social life, but at the same time, my work and my research has really been flourishing. So it's like, and it's kind of like I'm getting a lot, but I'm also like, there are certain deficits. But my point is, so I've had to constantly ask, like, is Cambridge a home or base or just some sort of transient thing? But I think about, okay, I don't know if I'll ever settle in Cambridge. I'm going to be here for a finite amount of time. So in this time, how can I feel the most settled, most grounded,
Right.
really absorbing the beauties and the unique gifts that this place can give me? Right. So in that sense, when I really embrace that kind of perspective or definition of a home, it allows me to feel really settled versus I've really struggled with grass is greener on the other side. Because when I'm in the US, I'm like, I miss the art and history of European context because they just have way longer history and
Yeah.
art and culture is much more accessible to the general public and population.
Right.
So, but then when I'm in Europe, I'm like, oh my God, they are Luddites. They don't embrace disruption and technology and innovation.
Yeah.
But then when I'm in Korea, I love the collective orientation. Also, just the being patriotic, but not necessarily in the American way of like, America is the only and the best. But Koreans are patriotic in a different way where they really, really, we love our culture and there are traditions that I think are being passed down. Although, of course, we're struggling with that.
Yes.
But my point is, there's no single place that has it all, Yuvan. And I don't think there ever will be, even in the same country, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe there are aspects of LA you love, and there are aspects of like NorCal, like SF you love, or New York City or whichever. So there's never going to be an all-encompassing place.
Right.
Okay. So with that in mind, okay, so is home that all-encompassing place or as close to it? Maybe. But because I'm so fascinated with being immersed in different cultures and environments, and I will continue to be for an X amount of time, I don't know how long,
Yeah.
I know that like there's always going to be some level of transience, right? So home for me is how present am I being? And like, am I really like embracing the beauties of this environment versus always defaulting to, oh, I'll have this in Europe, or oh, I'll have this in India, or oh. And that's the kind of like the blessing and curse of exposure, right? You can say cosmopolitan life, you have access to different languages, different worldviews, but then more exposure equals more comparison,
Yes.
right? So how do you take that, the superpower of diversity and the empathy it provides without falling victim to, oh, I can never have it all, you know? And that like extreme FOMO and grass is greener on the other
Yes.
side, yeah.
Absolutely. So I end every podcast with the same question. What are some words you choose to live by and why?
Okay, so this is like something that's a little bit more in the romantic relationship dimension of my life, I guess. But between everything that is said and not meant, and everything that is meant and not said, all love is lost. So if you let's just take a moment to deconstruct that. So between everything that's said and not meant, so you say things that you don't mean, right?
Yes.
We all know we are reactive creatures.
Yes. Yes.
And then between everything that is, and everything that is meant and not said. So you mean things and you feel things and they're genuine and sincere, but you don't vocalize that. So we're not mind readers, right? Telepathy is not a thing.
Yeah.
So much of love is lost,
Yeah.
right? So because again, I have loved ones across the world, first of all, when I'm speaking to them, let's say for whatever reason we're having a difficult conversation, I make sure, because I don't know when I'll speak to them again, right? That like I don't say things I don't mean, so I like have to check myself and my reaction.
Yeah.
Although I of course make mistakes all the time.
Of course.
But then also, flip side, I also want to take the time to appreciate and compliment, but in the most genuine, sincere way.
Right.
You know, and so that is really like a big North Star in my life of like, how do I not say things that like I don't mean and like hurt? Because words can be like weapons, right? Like really, the amount of damage that's done by sharing things that you don't mean in the heat of the moment, you know, and it can't easily be undone. Of course, you can heal that, but it takes time. You know, maybe it breaks trust. Maybe it really creates a big dent in that dynamic. So just being conscious of that and the power of our words and like what we put out into the universe, but also just making sure if you feel something really good, like let's say Yvonne, I just want to take a moment practicing this. What I'm preaching is, I think you're such a thoughtful person, and I could tell, you know, I consider myself a conversationalist, so I can tell like whatever output I've given you and whatever you give in return is so, like I can tell you've really listened.
Thank you.
You know, and that you're also not only listening to what I'm sharing, but also drawing from your own experiences, and that is real mindfulness and thoughtfulness. You know, and so I'm thinking that as I'm doing this podcast, and I want to take a moment to share that.
Thank
you know.
I appreciate
so
that.
that is just like, yeah, those two things I think super important to me. Like, so just if you feel like someone's outfit is rocking, and I do this all the time, right? Like where I'm like, oh my God, like really dope ass outfit, or like it's like a loved one that's just been a part of your child for a long time, and you're just so used to like, oh, they know this, that I appreciate them. Like I don't think they always do,
Yeah.
right? So
I
those
agree.
two things, yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tommy. This was awesome.
Thank you, Yvonne.